Imagine a bustling spring evening in Moscow, sometime in the 1930s, when the city's literary and cultural elite gather in public parks and cafes, discussing the latest plays, poems, and political gossip. The air hums with modern sensibilities. Strict atheism is the norm, and any mention of religious belief or the supernatural is met with condescension. It's in this environment that Mikhail Bulgakov's novel The Master and Margarita unfolds, introducing us to a strange visitor and his peculiar retinue, who soon cast a spell of chaos over the city. By the end, we've journeyed deep into a tapestry of interwoven narratives, from contemporary Moscow to ancient Jerusalem, from the realms of the mundane to the grand cosmic stage where good and evil wrestle for human souls. In telling this story, we'll go through each major event and character arc, immersing ourselves in the world Bulgakov created, a world where the devil himself strolls beneath Moscow's street lamps. Love defies all barriers, and compassion can transcend time. Our story begins in Moscow's Patriarch's Ponds, a tranquil area where two men, Mikhail Bulgakov, the distinguished editor of a literary magazine, and Ivan Bezdemny, a rising poet, are locked in conversation. They debate the existence of Jesus Christ. Bulgakov is adamant that Jesus is a mythical figure, nothing more than a legend perpetuated by religious tradition. Ivan follows suit, though less confidently, as he's trying to please Bulgakov by writing an anti-religious poem. As their conversation grows more intense, a stranger approaches. He is sharply dressed, foreign-looking, and has a peculiar air of authority about him. He calls himself Professor Woland and, with unsettling calm, insists that Jesus did, indeed, exist. With bewildering ease, he describes intimate details of Pontius Pilate's meeting with Yeshua HaNazri in ancient Jerusalem, as if recalling a personal memory rather than a distant historical event. What begins as a debate soon turns into a nightmare. Woland predicts that Bulgakov's death is imminent. Before the men can laugh him off as a madman, Bulgakov meets a violent fate, slipping on sunflower oil spilled by a mysterious woman. He tumbles on a tram tracks and is decapitated. Ivan, traumatized and desperate to make sense of this horror, chases after Woland and his strange entourage, an absurdly dressed ex-choir master named Faggot, also known as Koraviv, a formidable, gun-toting black cat named Behemoth, and a pale, fanged hitman known as Azazello. Ivan's pursuit leads him through the city's winding alleys until he ends up in a madhouse. His frantic attempts to warn others about Woland only convince doctors he's delirious. As this chaos ensues, we drift into a second narrative thread, a story within a story. It's the tale that Woland began to recount at Patriarch's Ponds, the encounter between the Roman procurator Pontius Pilate and Yeshua HaNazri. Suddenly, we're in ancient Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. The sun scorches the city's stones. Pilate, suffering from a terrible headache, is forced to adjudicate the fate of a wandering philosopher named Yeshua. Yeshua has been accused of inciting rebellion, but in conversation, he proves himself a gentle, insightful man who speaks of kindness, truth, and understanding. He unnerves Pilate by discerning the governor's private torment, hinting that true peace comes from the truth. Pilate is deeply moved by Yeshua's sincerity and desperately seeks a way to save him. But politics and fear override mercy. Ultimately, despite Pilate's wishes, Yeshua is condemned to death. The image is haunting. Yeshua, a figure of compassion, is led away under armed guard, and Pilate, racked with conscience, must watch from a palace terrace as the execution proceeds against his will. Back in Moscow, more strange events unfold. Woland, who is no ordinary foreigner, has taken up residence in Berlioz's former apartment. This apartment, notorious for unexplained vanishings, becomes a stage for supernatural mischief. Woland and his retinue launch an unforgettable black magic performance at the Variety Theater. The theater's audience, filled with Moscow's cultural aficionados, is initially delighted by the clever illusions. Money rains down from the rafters. Women are gifted new gowns out of thin air, and it seems a marvelous treat. But these pleasures come at a price. As soon as the show ends, the money vanishes or turns into worthless scraps, and the gowns disintegrate. Even more sinister, people start to disappear. Managers of the theater vanish overnight, and the financial overseer finds himself inexplicably teleported to distant Yalta. Through these pranks and punishments, Bulgakov reveals a key theme: the moral emptiness and petty corruption lurking beneath Soviet Moscow's polished literary and theatrical scene. Many who prided themselves on rationality and atheism, on their status within the cultural bureaucracy, now find themselves humiliated and frightened. Woland is no mere mischief maker. He's the devil visiting Moscow, doling out strange justice to hypocrites and opportunists. In the midst of this surreal frenzy, we meet the true protagonists of the novel, the Master and Margarita. The Master was once an aspiring novelist who dared to write a book about Pontius Pilate and Yeshua, exactly the story Woland narrated. The Master poured his soul into this manuscript, attempting to resurrect the truth of Yeshua's existence and Pilate's moral dilemma in a skeptical age. However, when the Master tried to publish his work, the Soviet literary world crushed him. Critics ridiculed him, the bureaucracy hounded him, and he lost all hope. He ended up burning his manuscript in despair and voluntarily committing himself to a mental institution, broken by the relentless torment of a hostile literary establishment. Margarita is the Master's devoted lover, a beautiful and intelligent woman trapped in a loveless marriage with a wealthy, well-connected husband. She met the Master in a chance encounter, a yellow flower in her hand, a spark of recognition in their eyes, and their love blossomed instantly. For a time, they lived together in a secret apartment, passionate, in love, and endlessly discussing the Master's novel. She believed fervently in his talent and the truth of his story. When he fell into ruin, disappearing into the asylum, Margarita's heart remained true to him. She pines for his return, for a chance to restore his manuscript, for a miracle that can heal the wounds inflicted by society. Enter Woland once again. This time, he seeks out Margarita. He recognizes her love's strength, something purer and mightier than any bureaucrat's pen or cynic's sneer. Woland proposes a strange bargain. If Margarita will serve as the hostess for his annual spring ball, the Walpurgis Night Ball, where the devil entertains a parade of historical villains, murderers, and the damned, he will grant her a wish. Margarita doesn't flinch. Love drives her to accept. She would do anything to save the Master and restore his broken spirit, even if it means consorting with the devil himself. The night of the ball arrives, and what a night it is. Azazello gives Margarita a magical cream to apply to her body. As soon as she does, she transforms. She becomes younger, more radiant, lighter than air. She gains the power of flight, leaving her old life behind. She soars above Moscow's rooftops, her heart pounding, a strange mixture of terror and exhilaration filling her veins. She stops by her old apartment, invisible, and witnesses how empty and meaningless her former bourgeois existence was. She even wreaks minor havoc at the apartment of a literary critic who tormented the Master, breaking vases and smashing windows unseen, an impish vengeance on the man who nearly drove the Master mad. But these small acts are only a prelude. Soon Margarita is whisked away to Woland's surreal residence. She descends a grand staircase, naked under a heavy necklace, with Corviv as her guide. The ball is a cavalcade of the damned. Kings who betrayed their people, poisoners, executioners, and tyrants from centuries past file in. Margarita must greet each guest, offer her arm as they bow, and kiss her hand. She is dignified, regal, and unwavering, her strength of character shining in this infernal setting. The atmosphere is eerie and magnificent. The ballroom's decor defies logic. The music is dissonant yet hypnotic, and a sense of timelessness envelopes them all. Margarita's role as hostess is a kind of moral test. She stands at the crossroads of history's sinners, showing neither fear nor cruelty, just the steadfast determination to earn Woland's promised reward. When the final, gruesome guests have departed, Woland keeps his word. He asks Margarita what she desires most. She could ask for gold, power, or revenge, but she wants none of that. Instead, her wish is merciful and pure. She asks Woland to free the master, to restore him to health, happiness, and the comfort of his beloved manuscript. Woland is pleasantly surprised. He comments that Margarita has asked for something truly noble. He grants her request. The master appears, weak and disoriented, brought forth from the asylum. In a remarkable twist, Woland also returns the master's manuscript, the very one he thought destroyed by flames, now intact. Manuscripts don't burn, Woland says cryptically, implying that true art and truth itself are immortal, surviving all attempts to obliterate them. The reunited lovers are not yet free. Though the master now holds his precious manuscript, he has been too deeply scarred. He no longer fits in Moscow's world, nor does Margarita. Their love and truth have set them apart from ordinary life. Sensing this, Woland confers with his companion, a mysterious female figure who appears only at the novel's end, and decides the master and Margarita must be granted peace. They cannot return to bourgeois normality, nor do they belong to Woland's retinue. Instead, they'll be offered a merciful release. A final journey awaits them, beyond the boundaries of the city. Before we follow them, let's return to the parallel narrative of Pilate and Yeshua. Throughout the novel, we revisit this ancient storyline in fragments. We saw Pilate condemn Yeshua reluctantly. Later, we watch as the execution unfolds. The sky darkens unnaturally at midday. The cruelty of the Roman soldiers and the agony of the condemned men, Yeshua and two other criminals, contrast with the profound sadness Pilate feels in the distance. After the executions, Yeshua's body is secretly taken away and given a dignified burial by a sympathetic man named Matthew Levi. Pilate remains tormented by his moral failure. He walks alone in his palace, cursed to think forever of the philosopher he let die. In Pilate's soul, a storm rages. He knows he failed to listen to truth and kindness, allowing political expediency to triumph over justice. It's in the novel's climax that these two storylines, Moscow and Jerusalem, intertwine under Woland's cosmic perspective. Woland is not merely there to humiliate corrupt bureaucrats. He also serves as a being who can grant ultimate justice or mercy. In the final chapters, Woland and his entourage mount black horses and ride over the nighttime city, heading toward the hills outside of Moscow's boundaries. They carry with them the Master and Margarita, who follow in a kind of dream state. Suddenly, the scenery shifts. We are no longer in contemporary Moscow, but at a strange borderland where mythical geography merges with spiritual reality. Here, Woland reveals that the Master's reward is not eternal happiness in heaven. He did not earn that, for he lacked total faith, but eternal peace. He and Margarita will live together in a tranquil cottage beyond the reach of pain, memory, and strife. Before granting them rest, Woland passes judgment on Pontius Pilate's fate. Pilate has been spiritually imprisoned for nearly 2,000 years, caught in a limbo, forever replaying his fateful decision, never forgiven, never forgetting the moral truth he encountered too late. The Master, having written Pilate's story, now has the power to resolve it. In a grand symbolic gesture, the Master completes his manuscript and, through his compassionate authorship, frees Pilate. We see Pilate walking with his dog Bunga under a moonlit sky, finally reunited with Yeshua in spirit, freed from the torment of indecision. By finishing the story properly, by acknowledging that mercy can transcend time, the Master grants Pilate peace. This is a profound statement on the power of narrative, imagination, and forgiveness. The Master's art, suppressed and ridiculed in life, becomes an instrument of liberation in the spiritual realm. With Pilate's soul released, Woland guides the Master and Margarita further. Under a moon that glows brighter and a silence that grows deeper, they arrive at a small house nestled in eternal peace. Margarita and the Master enter together, hand in hand. They have escaped the cruelty of the critics, the indifference of the world, and the misunderstandings of their time. In this final gift, Bulgakov offers a moving reflection on the nature of artistic integrity and love. That real creative truth and sincere love cannot be destroyed by persecution or even death. They transcend earthly limitations and find their own timeless sanctuary. Having escorted them to this resting place, Woland and his retinue ride off. They've completed their mission. Dawn breaks over Moscow once again, and the strange incidents of the previous days leave the city's inhabitants baffled. Some remember the bizarre events vividly. Others dismiss them as mass hallucinations or a fluke of spring madness. Ivan Bezdemny, the poet who once chased Woland, transforms into a reflective scholar. Though the asylum released him, he no longer composes the militant anti-religious verses he once wrote. Instead, every spring, on the night of the full moon, Ivan dreams of Pontius Pilate and Yeshua. He sees Pilate's final liberation, feeling a quiet yet potent reassurance that truth and mercy remain possible, even across millennia. These dreams, subtle gifts left by Woland's passage, remind Ivan, and by extension, the reader, that not all mysteries can be rationalized away. Some truths exist beyond the constraints of time, ideology, and logic. What are we to make of all this? Bulgakov's novel, as captured in this summary, weaves together multiple themes: the nature of good and evil, the burden of moral responsibility, the resilience of love, and the transcendence of genuine artistic creation. Woland, though the devil, isn't an archetype of pure malevolence. Rather, he's a judge figure who exposes hypocrisy, punishes petty cruelty, and ultimately respects true love and honest art. He doesn't spread sin. He reveals the sins that already exist and compels people to confront them. Meanwhile, the story of Pilate and Yeshua suggests that even a man of power, influenced by fear and politics, can be redeemed in memory or art. The Master's manuscript, miraculously surviving fire, demonstrates the immortality of truth and the written word. Margarita's transformation is equally profound. Initially trapped in a materialistic, empty life, she discovers her capacity for courage and selfless love. She dares to engage with the supernatural, to defy social conventions, and to host the devil's ball, all for the sake of her beloved. Margarita represents the power of love to overcome fear, greed, and despair. Her reward is not earthly riches or fame. It's reuniting with the Master and securing for both of them a peace beyond the world's reach. The city of Moscow itself becomes a stage on which these supernatural events unfold. Bulgakov situates the reader in a recognizable modern environment full of petty officials, trendy literary cliques, and relentless materialism. By introducing Woland into this setting, Bulgakov unmasks the absurdity of a society that pretends to be enlightened and rational while actually harboring corruption and cowardice. The transformations, people vanishing, money turning into leaves, a cat speaking and shooting firearms, are a magical lens highlighting the moral failures of everyday life. The setting contributes to the atmosphere, from cramped apartments to grand theaters, from quiet literary salons to the secret police's offices. The city is a tangle of ambition, fear, and longing. Yet overhead, the moon shines as a cosmic witness, indifferent to human folly and receptive to divine truth. Throughout the narrative, a rich layer of humor and irony underscores the drama. The devil's entourage is both terrifying and comical. The giant cat behemoth's antics, such as riding a streetcar or playing pranks on shopkeepers, inject absurdity into scenes of moral reckoning. Korovev's polite manners and ironic commentary, Azazello's deadpan ruthlessness, and Woland's calm, aristocratic demeanor create a dynamic cast of supernatural beings who are as entertaining as they are formidable. This blend of the comic and the profound ensures the story feels vibrant and engaging, never slipping into dry moralizing. In the end, the emotional heart of the novel lies with the Master and Margarita. Their love story provides the soulful core that unites the disparate threads, Moscow and Jerusalem, critique and compassion, despair and redemption. The Master wrote a novel that dared to consider Jesus as a real figure, a man of truth in a time when truth was scorned. For this, he suffered. Margarita risked everything, her honor, her sanity, even her mortal soul, to save him from oblivion. Their dedication to each other and to the truth in the Master's manuscript earns them a reward that the world could not give: peace, freedom from torment, and unity in a spiritual refuge. The concluding image of Pilate walking freely under a gentle moonlight, finally at peace after 2,000 years, closes the circle. Pilate's liberation is the triumph of compassion over guilt, of understanding over misunderstanding. By telling Pilate's story faithfully, the Master heals old wounds. This scene is symbolic of the author's belief in the redemptive power of storytelling itself. Literature, Bulgakov suggests, can reach across centuries, heal ancient rifts, and grant humanity the grace that history often withholds. The Master and Margarita also resonates with its historical context. Bulgakov wrote it during the height of Stalin's repressions, when censorship and fear stifled free expression. The Master's struggles parallel Bulgakov's own frustrations as an author silenced by authoritarian censorship. The Devil's Arrival and the resulting mayhem can be seen as a fantastical critique of a society that publicly denies the spiritual and the metaphysical, only to find itself helpless when confronted by these forces. In this sense, the novel makes a daring statement. Even in a world outwardly defined by materialism and political dogma, the spiritual dimension cannot be fully suppressed. Truth, beauty, and moral reckoning will assert themselves in surprising, unpredictable ways. By the time we finish the novel, we've traveled an extraordinary arc. We began with skeptical intellectuals at Patriarch's Pawns, dismissing the existence of Christ. We end on a plane of cosmic justice, where devils and angels influence human destinies, and where writers have the power to liberate souls across time. The journey is surreal, but its emotional authenticity grounds it. The terror and the humor, the love and the despair, the confusion and the clarity. These belong to real human experience, even if delivered through the lens of magic. In conclusion, The Master and Margarita is a richly layered narrative that defies easy categorization. By summarizing it in full, from Berlioz's tragic demise and Ivan's descent into madness, to the Master's heartbreak and Margarita's fearless bargain, from Pilate's moral anguish in ancient Jerusalem to the final granting of peace, we see how Bulgakov wove a tapestry of themes: the tension between spiritual truth and political conformity, the endurance of love and art against cruelty and indifference, and the ultimate possibility of redemption. The entire novel invites reflection on moral choices, the meaning of art, and the persistence of hope. In its final moments, as the Master and Margarita settle into their eternal refuge, and the moonlight bathes Pilate's forgiven spirit, we understand that true wisdom and compassion transcend all boundaries of time, place, and imagination.